to believing that Jesus died on the cross. The Quran states that Allah helped spread a corrupt version of Christianity. If he's the one helping the followers, then he's helping spread their message. And the Quran states, Quran affirms the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the Christian scriptures. So let's look at some of Shabir's responses. One, since the issue of the crucifixion is so crucial, I want to draw attention to an inconsistency in Shabir's method. If Shabir finds anything that any scholar has said that he can use to attack some Christian doctrine, he'll use that. But if there's a consensus among scholars on some issue and it disagrees with Islam, it's as if the scholarship doesn't matter. So let's take an example: Jesus' death by crucifixion. Go through some non-Christian scholars, and those of you who follow scholarship on early Christianity know who these guys are. Atheist New Testament scholar Gerd Ludemann says that Jesus' death as a consequence of crucifixion is indisputable. Well, why is Shabir disputing it? John Dominic Crossan of the Jesus Seminar says that there is not the slightest doubt about the fact of Jesus' crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. Marcus Borg, another member of the Jesus Seminar, states that Jesus' execution is the most certain fact about the historical Jesus. Jewish scholar Pinchas Lapid concludes that Jesus' death by crucifixion is historically certain. Notice they're not saying, yeah, we have some reason to think it. They're certainly not saying, well, what probably happened is that Jesus survived and then was raised from the tomb.
All right, so I just want to focus on this last part that David Wood was saying. He was saying, well, all the atheist scholars say that Jesus died by crucifixion. Now, David Wood is right that these people say that Jesus died by crucifixion. Gerd Ludemann, Bart Ehrman say Jesus was crucified and he died by crucifixion. That's true. I'm not denying that. So David Wood is right on that point. The problem is, I don't think David Wood gets, and all the Christians like him don't get, or they keep forgetting, is that Jews, Christians, and Muslims believe in the supernatural. They believe in the supernatural realm. So in a world where God exists, God could certainly keep Jesus alive God could keep Jesus alive when Jesus was crucified. That's certainly possible. How is that impossible? In a world where God exists, in a world where the supernatural exists, God could have helped Jesus survive the crucifixion. There's nothing impossible about that. So the reason why these atheist scholars say that Jesus died by crucifixion is because they don't believe in the supernatural anyways. They don't believe they don't believe in God to begin with. So they don't believe God could have kept Jesus alive through the crucifixion. Another thing is that, when these atheists say that Jesus was crucified, or he died by crucifixion, they're not really reading the New Testament Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John carefully. Because if you read the Gospel of Mark, Pontius Pilate marveled that Jesus died so quickly when he was taken down from the cross. That means that it's reasonable to assume that Jesus was taken down from the cross alive. And if you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we know that Jesus was only crucified for only 3 to 6 hours. In order to die by crucifixion, you need to be on the cross for a few days, at least like 3, 4, or 5 days to be killed on the cross. If someone is crucified and 6 hours later they're taken down, or 3 hours later they're taken down, they're going to survive the crucifixion. So if you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John carefully, we know that Jesus, there's nothing that killed Jesus on the cross. The spearing thrust in the Gospel of John is largely seen as a symbolic message. It's a symbolism. It's not to be taken literal. It was even church fathers took the spearing story of Jesus to be metaphorical and not literal. So Jesus wasn't speared on the cross. Nothing killed Jesus when he was on the cross. He survived the torture and whipping before the crucifixion. So, when Jesus was crucified, he certainly would have survived the crucifixion. There was nothing that killed him on the cross. And, if you read Josephus, you see that Josephus mentions 3 people were crucified. 1 was taken down, 1 survived. So it's certainly possible that Jesus survived the crucifixion. The reason why these atheists say that Jesus was killed by crucifixion is because they don't believe in the supernatural. They don't believe that God could have kept Jesus alive. Christians believe in the supernatural, so it's inconsistent for Christians to, uh, uh, you know, turn to these atheist scholars to say, yeah, Jesus died by crucifixion. Well, they don't believe in the supernatural anyways. They don't believe that God could have kept Jesus alive. So that's why they say that. But if we read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John carefully, nothing killed Jesus when he was crucified. So it's certainly reasonable to assume after Jesus was crucified, he was taken down alive. And from the tomb, he was translated or assumed into heaven, because if you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, nobody sees Jesus rise from the dead. No one sees the resurrected Jesus. The women go to the empty tomb and then they run away from the empty tomb in the Gospel of Mark. And if you read the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, verses 9 through 20 in modern day Bibles, it says this is a fabrication, or this was a later addition to the Gospel of Mark. So the earliest gospel, which is the Gospel of Mark, does not have the resurrection story or Jesus coming out, the resurrection story of Jesus. So that means that the resurrection story was made up later on after the crucifixion. And if you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they will contradict themselves. They'll contradict themselves in regards to the crucifixion. That means we know that the post crucified Jesus appearances, or the so-called resurrection appearances, were largely seen as not historical or made up as time went on. So Shabir Ali's theory makes sense that Jesus was crucified, he was taken down alive, and then from the tomb he was taken into heaven. The reason why David Wood is just going after or saying that, Allah spread Christianity or whatever is because he's not really reading the New Testament carefully. If we read Galatians chapter 1 verse 16 to 20, I believe Paul says he didn't get the crucifixion and resurrection from Jesus' disciples. He got it from a revelation from Jesus Christ. That means Paul made up the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, not the disciples. Again, if we read Galatians chapter 1, we can see this. So this is just my brief thoughts on the crucifixion and why atheists say that why Jesus died by crucifixion, and why it's an inconsistent for Christians to appeal to atheist scholars when these atheist scholars don't believe in the supernatural to begin with. David Wood, as a Christian, believes in the supernatural. So if he believes in the supernatural, if he believes in God, etc., then he has to be more consistent in his arguments when he's trying to argue against Islam. So this is just my brief recap, or this is just my brief thoughts on these Christians going to atheists to appeal to or to show that Jesus died by crucifixion. It's inconsistent and it doesn't work given their theological presuppositions. Stay tuned, more videos coming up ahead.